YouTube as well, Henry. You'll see what of this is tonight. I saw you on YouTube last night, Henry.
Yeah, I thought I'd contribute, but you ignored it.
This is live. Yeah, I know you contributed because I was too busy doing this one night. Anyway, so. There we go. I am there. I am with it, right? I am with it. And as proof of me being in this, right, I will show you straight away if we go to my screen, right? See, I don't like Henry doing his naughty stuff, right? So we're gonna go on to the official professional listing, and I will show you. Well, I'm not in the first episode anyway, right? So it's something called IMDb. There we go, and you'll see me straight away. There I am, actor in Young Sherlock. There I am, and I will show you now. Known for Young Sherlock, and we will go down the list of actors on it. Web browser, okay. Photos, cast listing. I don't know where I'll be on this list, but I'm on there somewhere. Right, hang on. There we go. Here's the list. As we go down, Joseph Fiennes, Colin Firth, and as I go down, I'm here somewhere. I will get to me a moment, and I am here somewhere. It's gonna be really embarrassing if I'm not on this list. There I am. Patient at the asylum.
Asylum.
There you go. I'm there.
Uncredited.
Shut up.
Well, congratulations.
Do you speak any words?
Yes, I do.
Oh.
Right, anyway, well, where am I? Right, where am I? Now, so let's just see where we are. See, I had to prove something then. He's gone off now, Henry. He's gone back to Akrotiri. Right. Goff, any news from you this week other than some wine?
Oh yes, the cellar. They found a wine cellar. Yes, and after a sinkhole in a golf course. Yes.
And that's where we're going to go on straight away. We do like a good old wine.
I was wondering whether that was qualified as an article for this session, but I thought it was quite good actually.
It does qualify for Henry because he likes a bit of wine. What about you, Bill?
Well, I like to wine too, as you know, Carl. I'm good at it, aren't I? But
I've heard, particularly when you're in the pubs in good old Orkney with the women.
Oh yeah. No, I've got nothing this week, Carl, so we can move on.
And Henry, other than Young Sherlock, any news from you?
They discovered in Switzerland a 3,500-year-old bronze axe unearthed, which is 23 centimeters long, 22 centimeters long. One piece of bronze.
22 centimeters. That's like that
10
long.
inches. 10 inches.
Yeah.
That's like that long.
Yeah.
That's that long. Apparently, Goff has been telling women this for years. It's that long, right? So 10 inches long.
Yeah, in your dreams.
They seem to be getting rather excited about it.
What about Goff's?
My bronze axe.
Okay, we'll go to your bronze axe straight away before we do anything else, right? So right, let's get on to bronze axes. Right, bronze axes, bronze. Start now, and there we go, and bronze axe. Right. So we got bronze axe. Where are we looking at?
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Switzerland, yeah, good start, good start. There we go. There it is. There it is. And it goes on as follows. Consent, okay. Here we go. Archeo News. Extraordinary discovery in Switzerland. Massive. 10 inches long.
That's massive.
Massive. Hang on a minute. There's a cat trying to get in a minute. Bill, talk about the size of it. Go on.
It's over 10 inches. It's over the axe head. Maybe the shaft was estimated to be quite long. Yeah, just the head it is.
It's massive. It's the biggest axe to ever be found on the planet the Earth.
If that's 10 inches, the axe head would be something like maybe 4. Is that big? It probably is from all the Bronze Age axes I've seen. Yeah, maybe it is big. Not massive, but bigger than normal, I would say.
It's massive.
And it's notched at the end. Look, now that's interesting. You see, right on the end, there's a notch. So something went in there.
Well, maybe what it was. It was an archetype for an iron axe.
Who would have used that then?
Dave.
Who would have used it, Carl?
Yeah. So it looks like this is possibly something. Yeah, it is damaged at one end, isn't it? So it looks like it's something. It's not going to be for cutting down trees, that's for sure. It's probably going to be for light woodwork, for cutting out sort of hollows of trees, maybe to make canoes or something like that. That's probably for.
Or killing people.
Yeah. Not
Everyone,
so, maybe.
everyone likes a bit of fighting and war. They had this technique for hollowing out timber boats. So you take the bark off, you scoop a tiny little bit of the top off, and then you make a fire on there, and then you scoop her out with something like this, and you keep going like this. Well, people are going to say it's to do with war, aren't they? But it's a nice artifact. But I would like us to go, for example, to the golf course sinkhole. So let's have a little look at this. Golf course. What was that? Golf course in Switzerland. Golf course sinkhole. I didn't know they had golf in Switzerland, do they? What's going on? Right, sinkhole. Hole. Go. Golf course in Switzerland. There. Abandoned cellar. So we're gonna have the abandoned cellar here, right? Now look at that. They were playing golf, and then something went down a hole. And come on, open. Right, there we go. I got the article here, so we'll have the image up. I thought this was a nice little something different. What the hell's that? I don't want to pay for this. Oh my God. No. Right. Right. Okay. Let's just try independent then. There. Is it going to come up? Bunkered. Sounds like a dodgy, weird porn website, that does. Right. Okay. Right. So here we go. There. I think that looks great. So anyway, the article is as follows. It sort of says, golf course sinkhole reveals a wine cellar dated back to the 1800s. Keeper discovered dozens of empty bottles in structure underneath the 13th hole in Greater Manchester Club. Right. A sinkhole has revealed a wine cellar, and basically it's sort of there, and unfortunately, there it is. These are the bottles. So it is reckoned that it was exposed after a period of prolonged wet weather, softening the course and increased the weight of the surface soil. a club spokesman said, and those are the bottles. I think you got little labels on it, or maybe not. So ancient bottles of port, they can't be ancient. They're only bloody 200 years old. But that's basically a nice little bit of a find. And wow, that's amazing. And basically, and they're talking about this and sort of, so yeah, so that's the find. Yeah, it is archaeology, anything underground. And when you think about it, right? And those are the hang on, stalactites, isn't it? They come down. Yeah, so you've got stalactites there. Nice little bit of a find. So yeah, it is archaeology when you think about it. Stuff from the Second World War is archaeology, and this is 200 years old. Right, so what we do today, I'm going to get off this thingamajig, right, and we're going to do this now. Last week I was last week I was bunkering down at the end of looking at Caligula on Tuesday, and I mentioned that one of our people on Tuesday had actually said that there's a few historians out there who actually believe what I'm saying, that there was in fact a Roman of Britain under the reign of Caligula. And this comes down to something that there's a historian known as David Woods. There's a few historians actually, and it goes that he argues that that the supposed shells that Suetonius and Dio Cassius were talking about, that Caligula's troops collected on the beach, weren't actually shells at all, because David Wood argues that the word used in ancient sources, conche, may have been misunderstood. Instead of seashells, it could refer to a type of light craft, small boats used by British forces known as coracles. In this scenario, Caligula orders his men to collect enemy ships, which they did, and they were later paraded in Rome as trophies of war. I may have mentioned this sort of on Wednesday, but I just wanted to say that we had a big discussion about this yesterday, about that very quote from a historian saying that the shells that collected were not shells, were in fact boats, and coracles are not the types of vessels that can go out in the North Sea and actually survive. So the only place that these boats could actually be collected is Norfolk, where you've got fen-like landscape, and not places like Kent. And obviously with Velsen, Amsterdam, directly opposite the Norfolk coastline, you could understand that the soldiers of Caligula actually collected coracles from the fens of Norfolk, which would make sense. And there was obviously no opposition, and he came, he saw, he conquered. And I also said last night, I actually deep down don't see what the big question is, whether Caligula invaded Britain or not. If he did make a little foray, so what? And why sort of destroy, his sort of his name and all the rest of it? And that obviously led to the eventual invasion of the Emperor Claudius over to Britain in the summer of AD 43, which is obviously in the history. I did promise this week that we would be focusing on the archaeology from now onwards, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So this worked out pretty well last night, and as this is like a shorter presentation than Tuesday, I think we'll pretty much go up to 9 o'clock, and that should be good. So I did mention that what we're going to do is we're going to look at the archaeology per se specifically, and one of the things that we are going to do is we're going to focus on what's found in the ground. So as I'm just getting my as I'm just getting my notes up, and I've got all my bits and pieces in front of us, we will be looking at Richborough next week as an archetypal archaeological landscape to try and understand what Roman Britain actually means. So the big question tonight is what happened. What happened in Britain between Caligula and the very night before Claudius's invasion in the summer of AD 43, and that'll bring us nicely into Roman era Britain. And then sort of along the way, we look at lots of misconceptions about the archaeology. And one of the things I wanted to mention and wanted to sort of pick up is what maybe a good question would be to sort of ask Bill's point of view, right, and ask Bill's story of what he thinks, what the story is with Maiden Castle, right? I know it's not fair to ask that, Bill, but historically, Bill, what would you say happened to Maiden Castle? Just talk and let us all know. And then we will deconstruct or say that argument is probably correct. What actually happened to Maiden Castle when the Romans invaded Britain? Bill, over to you.
Was that the largest multi-village Iron Age settlement in the country? I don't like using the word fort, Carl, as you know.
No, I never use the word. In fact, in the new
settlement. Yeah, defending settlement. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, the Romans came, and after a long assault, they actually got up to the top and won it. They built a small temple there, as we know. And the site was excavated by Sir Mortimer Wheeler, who brought in the new sort of grid system, very innovative at the time. Apart from that, it's extremely impressive. And its history is before the Romans, probably a little bit unknown, or is it? So I couldn't say much more than that, Carl, actually.
Well, actually, the one thing I'm going to say, right, without sort of any, actually, do you know what I'm going to do? We'll have a little bit of an illustration in front of us to sort of see if what Bill's saying is sort of a good story, a good yarn. So let's just sort of see that. Let's just. I hadn't planned to put an image of this up, but if we put Maiden Castle there, and we go an image, that'd be good. And maybe do I just let's just let's go with this. I like things that are wrong. Right, not that one. Let's do this one. Okay. Right, that's sort of a reconstruction of Maiden Castle, and for me that's totally completely wrong. We now know that that's not what Maiden Castle looked like interior wise. That's looking from the main entrance, but everything about that reconstruction is wrong. So if we look here. And I'm a bit struggling trying to get a decent image up, just an image, right? So no, let's just try and get that there. Right, another one of Maiden Castle. So Bill basically mentioned, obviously, there was a little assault on it, and the Romans captured it, and the Romans built a temple on it. One part of the story of what Bill came across was that we're now looking at the fact that there was no military assault on this site, and what we do find is that Maiden Castle was probably more or less abandoned as a bank and ditched enclosure. That's what I like to call these things, not a hill fort. And Bill's right, they're not forts. And because this was abandoned probably about 100 years BC and maybe just a farm-like landscape, so by the time the Romans got here, they're looking at a site that is just not really a threat to anyone. But I said I wasn't going to do history, but the history tells us that the future Emperor Vespasian, as a general, a legator of the Roman army, marched towards this locality, besieged it, put the defenders to death, and set light to the whole thing. But we now stand to think that there's no archaeological evidence for any of that. However, the one name that Bill did come up with, the excavator of the site, was in fact the very eminent Sir Mortimer Wheeler. Now, Sir Mortimer Wheeler excavated in the 1930s with his wife, Tessa Wheeler. And Tessa Wheeler wasn't the first female archaeologist in Britain, by the way. We also had Kathleen Kenyon, Gertrude Garrod, Gertrude Bell. There was quite a few, Cato Thompson. There was quite a few female archaeologists about. But she's noted for being probably one of the first TV female archaeologists. So that's another thing. But the and it's wrong when Bethany Hughes says that she's the first TV archaeologist, which is wrong. But anyway, that's something else. But anyway, the point is with what Bill said is that if we take away the history, the archaeology speaks better. And the reason why I'm mentioning that just quickly before I get on to my stuff is that when we think about the archaeology of this site, Maiden Castle, when Sir Mortimer Wheeler's excavating here in the 1930s, he reports in the newspapers, and Bill's right, they used a box grid square excavation method where they set everything out in boxes and they left a bit between the next excavation plot, and then they excavated that and they could read the layers, and it all worked out well because Sir Mortimer Wheeler had been a bombardier in the British Army in the First World War, but that's by the by at this minute. And when they found a lot of bodies at the opposing entrance to this, right, because this is really elaborate, they actually found about 50 sets of human remains, and immediately, because of the history and everything, Sir Mortimer Wheeler said that the bodies represented those that were killed in battle, which was wrong, because most of the bodies had been laid out in a very respectful manner, not dumped into pits that you'd usually have with a battlefield. And what Sir Mortimer Wheeler did at the time, he basically linked in the history with the archaeology, right? When in fact the archaeology later on turned out that the bodies found were buried over such a long period of time, they could have not all been buried at one moment in time. So the reason why we're key interested in just looking at the archaeology tonight is that by looking at the archaeology, you're not going to be distracted by the history, because history inevitably gives you a different story, and sometimes history gives you the wrong story. And sometimes I delve really deep. You know, I mentioned the Second World War a lot, but I sometimes delve really deep into the Second World War, and I actually think, the history of the Second World War is not really accurate, right, in lots of cases. And the biggest thing is that good example of writing about the Second World War and actually looking at what happened on the ground is that when they say the Italians only had one gear on their tanks and it was reverse, and I can categorically tell you that that is completely wrong. It was the Italians who were actually defending against the British whilst the German army was retreating. It was Italian tanks that were defending against the British whilst the 50 or so German tanks were retreating. But history tells us that you know, the Italians were cowards, and they weren't. And looking at the archaeology on the ground, you can actually see lots of Italian tanks which were blown to smithereens because they were defending the German retreat. So so even in modern history, you can actually tell that things are not quite right, and we've been doing that with Caligula. So again, back to the Caligula thing, that if we had moved all the information out of Caligula, which was historical, we'd be left with the evidence on the North French coast. We would be left with evidence in Amsterdam. We would be left with lots of evidence to show that the Romans actually built in the reign of Caligula not one, not two, but three that we know of large legionary fortresses for the 22nd Legion that Caligula established. We know that there's lots of Caligula coins in Norfolk, which is the proposed landing spot of Caligula's small expedition. If we remove the history, it makes it more plausible that he did invade, because you've got the evidence to say that there's stuff going on that indicate that an invasion was going to happen or had happened. So anyway, back to the archaeology, and actually I felt yesterday more excited that we were going to be doing archaeology rather than history. And the reason why I was feeling a lot more excited was because I prefer archaeology over history any day, because when you get history, you get lots of arguments. It's like, oh, this person said this person said that, right? But the archaeology, you've actually got a wall, you've actually got artifacts, you've actually got mosaics, you've actually got military gear in the ground. How can you argue over that? It's actually clearly that's what you've got. But with history, you can argue one way or another. I'm sure people will argue till they go blue that the Italians were cowards in the Second World War, right? But they weren't. And that's just one example. And people will still argue that Caligula was an absolute lunatic because they've seen the film from 1979. But he wasn't a lunatic. He wasn't a lunatic in my eyes, right? So back to the archaeology and sort of understand this a lot more. And this is how we're going to be going forward. So when we're trying to paint the scene, Bill did a little bit earlier on. The reason why we did Maiden Castle, and it's a bit more relaxed, you guys, when I'm doing this, because sometimes on a Tuesday, because I got more people and I got more people wanting to say things, and because I got a few people who are sort of doing more research, and sort of it can be a bit more contested, but that's because they're looking at the history. Now we're looking at the archaeology, strict archaeology, no literary speculation, no reprofiling, no refitting the evidence. It's the evidence that's there. That's it. No more, no less. So again, thinking what we're really doing today, we're sort of sitting on the sort of trying to sort of fill that gap, so the empty gap of history. And when we're talking about the empty gap of history, what I mean by that is that I think when people are talking about the Second World War, they just like to get to 1939 and get to the 1945, forget about Japan, and then we got Nuremberg, and then we got that's that, right? That's how we do Second World War in this country, right? That's completely untrue. The Second World War probably began with the Spanish Civil War. It began in China with the invasion of the Japanese into China, the Finnish War, all these different things, right? And when we're talking about AD 43, it's not just AD 43. History does not begin with AD 43. It's already started, and this is what the archaeology tells us. The archaeology is there. This is a great reconstruction, and I love this reconstruction. I really like good reconstruction. I don't like poor reconstructions. Me and Bill have seen some really, mind my French, crap reconstructions. So when you go to Skara Brae, for example, after listening to somebody going on about the fact that in 1850, Skara Brae on Orkney Island, half of the village was washed into the sea. And then you go into the museum, it shows a reconstruction of the buildings that were there, with no other buildings that have been washed into the sea. It completely ignores all the archaeology, all the history, and the reconstruction is completely wrong, right? But something like this is really, really nice, because what it does, it smashes the narrative, right? So what you've got Caliver Atrobatum, the archaeological evidence of Caliver Atrobatum, which I've already mentioned before, but the archaeological evidence of Caliver Atrobatum, that's the place, Silchester, that's south west of Reading, right? Not Reading, Bill, Reading. And what we're finding is that they not only had round buildings, they had a lot of rectangular buildings, they had a lot of hall-like buildings, there were lots of square buildings, they had lots of linear buildings. Caliver Atrobatum was going to become a town with or without the Romans, and that is a really powerful thing to say. We didn't need Rome to become where we are today. I will argue with anyone till I go blue, and they go blue. We did not need Rome to be us, right? Because Christianity got to Ireland without the Romans, right? Ireland evolved into a dynamic, civilized place without the Romans, right? If it could have happened in Ireland, it could have definitely happened here, and we would be where we are today. We would have had the Anglo-Saxons anyway. We would have had the Vikings. We'd have probably had 1066 on the 14th of October, and that's it, right? So visible archaeology is there. It's a story. It's a projection of real understanding and values of coinage, of people, the death of Conobolinus, and then we think, well, you know, Conobolinus, who actually wrote about Conobolinus? Shakespeare. But we do actually have coins from Conobolinus, which is, yes, he is there in the archaeology. So if you remove Shakespeare from Conobolinus, what are we then left with? We talking about Togodumnus? Are we talking about the likes of Caraticus? What's the relationship between, why we suddenly see Cara on coins, right, after the death of Conobolinus? There's no history being written. The actual coins tell us a really good history anyway, right? We could roughly work out what's going on. If we don't have the written history, and lots of what's being done by historians, they've basically they've fudged guesses. They've thought of, right, okay, roughly Adminius flees to Caligula, right? He's sent out of Britain roughly AD 39, AD 40, right? So what's happening in AD 40? It must mean that Conobolinus is dead. So what are the other coins coming out? There's coins with Cara on them, and we've actually found one coin with the name Togodumnus on it, only one. So specifically thinking about the coin evidence, information on coins tells us as much as the historians can tell us anyway. So I think one of the points that I made last night, right, was that I basically said to everybody, I said, look, when you're looking at a book, Romans in South Wales, and my book, and you're thinking, right, what am I actually writing about? I'm initially writing a lot of history. So on page 19, I'm talking about from AD 43 to AD 85. There are 11 governors of Britain. Written down historical evidence in Britain on inscriptions and stuff. We're going to probably work that out without the Romans actually writing this down somewhere, right? But the interesting thing is about the archaeology of Roman era Britain is after about AD 85, the list of those 11 governors of Britain from AD 43 starts to get scarce. And the interesting thing with that is that it seems that we know a lot about Roman era Britain between AD 43 and about AD 100 or thereabouts. And slowly the written history about Roman era Britain just sort of slowly starts to disintegrate. So we've got to rely more upon the archaeology and interpretation of the archaeology. So let's just look at the archaeology per se anyway. let's see what that can tell us. So anyway, keep my book with us, and the list of those governors are on page 19. So in a way, I'm going against what I've actually written in my own stuff, but obviously that was, you know, a few years back. So my mind has sort of developed into what I'd always wanted to think about with the likes of, you know, the Roman world and the archaeological evidence. And I always used to think, is it at all possible to tell the archaeology and the history of Britain without historical records? And it is, definitely, 100%. So when we look at what's the presence of the Roman world in Britain, it's not military until AD 43, right? It's everything else. It's the trade items. It's the coins. It's the continued towns and development of Geropolis and Dorset, and it's like the development of Camel and Junum, Colchester, and you know the one place that me and Bill never went to is Caliver Atrabatum, which is which would be a place to visit indeed, right? But Caliver Atrabatum, Silchester, southwest of Reading, is a great example of real British development without Rome. And then you could come in, oh, but you're finding bits of amphora there from before AD 43. You're finding bits of Samian ware before AD 43. You're finding bits of glass, and you see the same evidence of Camel and Junum. But you've got to think, is this all about what? Is this all about Rome slowly, bit by bit, stealthily taking over Britain by who they are, or what we're doing? We're basically saying in Britain, we're saying actually we're grabbing stuff from you, right? But we're also pushing our world out. We're pushing our ideas out, right? And then somebody said last night, they said, if you look at Roman era Britain, we're putting as much into the Roman sense of who they are in Britain as much as they're doing it to us. And we're just thinking something like this. We're thinking this was Heybridge, for example. And what they're saying with Heybridge is they're saying it's almost as if this is developing anyway, without Rome from the archaeology. And again, back to this is definitely developing without Rome, being something very, very special. So the hardest data, the hardest evidence, when we're looking at this sort of weird little period before the night of AD 43, is that there's an intensified cross-channel connectivity and political tension. So let's break this down by evidence type. So the first one we're going to look at is coin evidence, the hardest data. And this is really, really interesting when we look at the coins. So let's just go straight into the coins. I've got a few plans that we sort of fudge around, but let's just sort of work out where we are. So Catavolani, right, Trinovantes and Atrabatai, and then you go all the way through the Belgi, which seem to some stage go somewhere else. And you get to that little bit sticking out just above the Isle of Wight. That's where you got Chichester, and that's where you got Fishbourne. Very interesting localities in the archaeology. So if we go to, and to get an idea of the place names, and I really regretted copying this one because it's not very clear, but there's Caliver Atrabatum, there's Verulamium, there's Camel, hang on a minute, there's Camel and Junum, right? It's not actually shown on here, but roughly around there you got Geropolis, right? So, and the one place that isn't on here is Londinium, because Londinium didn't exist in any way, shape or form. As far as we know in the archaeology, we've got some evidence of some Iron Age stuff going on there, but not a big settlement to support a community. But if we sort of move, and yeah, what is interesting, the Catavolani. So we're thinking about somewhere in history, the Carbolinus, Togodumnus, Again, these are not historical figures; they're testated in the archaeology and on coins. We at Minis we looked at last week, and we've got all these people associated with the Catavilani, right? The Catavilani eventually start kicking the butts of the Trinovantes and the Atrebates. They start to get really big sort of people, and they're within a short period of time getting very powerful. How are they becoming very powerful? That's the question we could probably look at over the next few weeks. So the coin evidence, the hardest data, the hardest evidence, that what we're thinking of, right? And I just cut this out from Cambridge University Press, and it says Conobolinus, the king of the Britons. Well, that's a historical thing, isn't it? We're not really interested in that, but we know Conobolinus died roughly around AD 40, right? Now Conobolinus issued lots of gold coins. When we say lots of gold coins, we're not talking about tens of thousands a year. We're talking about, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, probably millions of gold coins, right? Millions of silver coins, because we found a lot of them in the archaeology, and lots of different designs. And so when you see lots of different designs on dyed coins, hammered coins. I mentioned this before. A really nicely created iron die, before it's remelted down to make another die, you can usually make about 10,000 coins for it. So if you've got thousands of different coin designs, right, that's slight exaggeration. No, not thousands. If you've got hundreds of different coin designs from Conobolinus, right, those hundreds of coin designs individually represent a single die of 10,000 coins. You can get a big figure of hundreds, if not a million coins issued in the reign of Conobolinus. And this very talk about gold and silver, come on, we'll mention that in a moment, right? But you've got high volumes of bronze coins as well. Now, this is really interesting. Bronze coins, why you issue bronze coins? You only issue bronze coins if you've got a monetary system, right? If you only gold and silver coins, then they might just be status symbols to tell people that we are the people of the we are the people of Conobolinus, right? But you've got a lot of coins, and an argument for this, a metaphor for the argument, is that today, we can argue over this, guys. Today, I don't think we got a coin-based monetary system in Britain anymore. I don't think we do, right? The last time I actually gave anyone any coins was about about 6 months ago. Last time I actually used coins, right? I've got banknotes in my wallet. Shut up, Bill. I got banknotes in my wallet that haven't gone anywhere. They're just there because I all my stuff is digital, right? And the point I'm trying to make is that no, we haven't got a coin-based economy anymore. We don't have it today. We don't, right? But when we did have a coin-based economy 30 years ago, coins were king. We use coins for everything. We use coins on the Severn Bridge, for God's sake. We use coins for everything 30 years ago, but now we don't, right? And if we think how important coins were and what coins did, we can understand what coins did in this period of Conobolinus, and the wide-scale circulation of bronze coins. I think I'm right on this. You can say I'm wrong, because I know Henry's going to look this up. We haven't issued any copper coins with the head of King Charles on them. I think limited ones, but not really popular circulation, and that's why we're moving from a coin-based economy, right? But if you've got bronze coins in circulation in the reign of Conobolinus, it's a coin-based economy, right? And they're using coins, and they're using coins before AD 43, and they're mass producing these coins. So when we think about and that's another thing as well, is when we're, again, there's loads of really interesting things about this. So when we again think about when we then think about, not that, get rid of that, we think about Camalodunum, we think about Verulamium. When we think about these two localities, right, we're very much looking at places that minted coins. Yeah. So the place that we're thinking that Rome went to first, when they had boots on the ground, as Donald Trump is saying with Iran, we're going to get boots on the ground, right? When the Romans got boots on the ground in AD 43, right? The Romans went directly for Verulamium and Camundunum because they were the ones who minted the coins, right? If you're going to control a people, you need to start minting coins that have actually got the head of the new ruler on, who's actually Claudius, not frigging Conobolinus, or well, it's not going to be Conobolinus in AD 43, not the likes of Caraticus, not the likes of Togodumnus, right? We need to get to those localities. Very important that in history, right? But what's going on with, we've done a whole session on coins, so we're not really going to do a whole session on coins tonight. We're going to do a few coins, not too many. And so what you've got is that after, it is very odd. I find this really odd. You've got Adminius fleeing to the Romans, right? Saying, look, I'm pro-Roman. The Cativalani were sort of pro-Roman. Conobolinus is dead, and now Caraticus and Togodumnus, the two brothers, don't want to know Rome anymore, right? But that people of the Cativalani, right, Caraticus, they're actually producing coins which look very Roman, with winged busts, with sphinxes, with the equestrian figures, and what they're doing is they're almost saying, right, we can do coins better than you, Rome, up yours, and we are owning this idea on our coins, right? And this is so important because it gesticulates to us thinking, right, we don't actually need Rome, but what we're going to do, we're going to take from Rome what we want, right? That is not a people that is being conquered by the Roman idea, right? It's people owning the Roman idea, which is different, right? And I can tell you an example of this, and I know I've told you this before, and we'll go on to some coins now. I'll tell you this, that coin of Conobolinus, right? And this is before, obviously the coins are getting really Roman in Conobolinus, but really Roman after as well. When the American embassy was captured in Vietnam in 1975, it was thought that the Coca-Cola machine would be smashed up and destroyed as a symbol of American colonialism, right? But instead, the first thing that they did was to take the Coca-Cola machine out with the Coca-Cola bottles, start manufacturing Coca-Cola themselves, right? And basically still use the brand of Coca-Cola because it's an American brand. And the Vietnamese were saying, actually, we now own this brand. This is now our brand. This is now us. It's not American colonialism. We're now owning this idea. And in a way, this is what the people of Britain are doing, right? From that in for piece of evidence from 1975. That's what they're doing before Rome comes over here, right? So coin of Conobolinus, a prancing horse. Well, up until Conobolinus, it was like the Uffington horse. So what we're doing, we're using a prancing horse, like a Roman prancing horse. Really fine with the dots around the outside, right? And we're looking at the rim there. We're thinking, right, this has been hammered. Beautiful coin, beautiful gold coin. Now there's a point that I've just missed from what we've just mentioned. Keep this coin there. Keep it sort of glaringly looking at us as stater, right? So staters can roughly be the size of a pound coin, basically. And as fat as a pound coin, as fat as all that gold in your hand, that's a stater. But I have mentioned this before, and we have mentioned this so many times, and we don't need to debate this because we never got an answer anyway. But the point is that where is gold in Britain? It's not in Norfolk, right? There's not much gold in the rest of not much gold in England at all, unless you go down to Cornwall, right? There is gold in Cornwall. But the 2 points with this is that it seems that the people making a lot of coins, like the Iceni people, like the Trinovanti people, like these people, the Catalani people, are using gold coins, and they're using silver coins, not bronze, right? And you're thinking, well, where are they getting their gold and silver from? So you're getting your silver and your gold from Cymru, Wales. You're getting your silver and gold from Cornwall, right? You're getting your silver and gold from Scotland, right? There is bits of silver and gold in England, but what not a lot, right? Very little gold at all. But on the fringes, and Peter would say that Cornwall's not England, so that's not included. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that this gold always seems to be made into coins into places that there is no gold. And it's a really weird thing, that it's a really weird thing to be talking about. The most, if we want to look at an Iron Age context, sort of early Iron Age, or mid Iron Age into the Bronze Age, you're talking about gold talks. Well, more gold talks have been found in East Anglia, than anywhere else in Britain. But there's no gold there naturally, and it's a really odd concept. And then the other thing as well is I want to make, this is a point that will come up again, is that the places that are actually, and we are really talking about the really end stages of sort of Iron Age Britain, going up to AD 43, really at the end. In Cymru, Wales, no coins have been known or been produced in gold or silver by any other peoples in Cymru, Wales. And it's the same as the Dumnonii of Cornwall. They're not producing any gold or silver coins, but that's where all the gold is. So what is going on in those places? Surely they'd want to tell the world that, hey, we're the annoying Welsh, or we're the annoying people like Pete from Cornwall, right? But they're not doing it, right? They're just not doing it. And we're not going to get an answer to that. We don't really need to discuss it, but we could do. But anyway, the point of colour blindness, and we're thinking again, this sort of symbolism, this rampant symbolism of a wheat sheaf there, and again a prancing horse, and again the Catavallanoi in there on the coin, and Conobolinus. So okay, it's really difficult to work out which is the obverse and the reverse, because the obverse has usually got the bust of a leader on it, and the reverse has usually got whatever else on it. So this is one side and the other. I can't really go there, but on the one side you've got the Catavallanoi, Catu on there, on where you've got the wheat sheaf, and Conobolinus where you've got the horse just before AD 40. So Conobolinus, massive gold and silver issues, strong Roman iconography, but the wheat sheaf isn't. But the sort of way that wheat sheaf comes out the bottom, right? That sort of looks really Roman, and the prancing horse is Roman as well. And the lettering is Roman. Oh, is it? And is it? Yeah. So we're thinking, well, is the lettering on there actually Roman? Who can actually own that lettering? So the point I'm trying to make is that coins are being produced in Britain for well over 100 years before AD 43, right? Well, actually, well over about 150 years, maybe 200 years, coins are being produced in Britain. I think we got beyond that. I think we got beyond about 200 years BC. But anyway, but the issue with all of this is that are we using Latin, or are we using these types of capitals on coins because it's a Roman thing, or is it something that's come generally from the Mediterranean world? That's the question. It's always, I'm criticised a lot by people who watch my videos, who actually say, well, they say, oh, Carl, you're always doing the Roman bit, you're always up in Rome, you're always saying that Rome did this, Rome did that, right? But the thing is, I'm not. because what I'm trying to do is I'm sort of be a bit bipartisan and basically say, well, there's a bit of this and there's a bit of that, and it's just like having an open mind, really. So this is the head of wonderful. This is the head of wonderful Conoblinus again, and the one, you know, we've seen images of Conoblinus in the past, and this figure, you could look at this and you could think, oh, this figure looks Roman, but when you actually get into it, this person's shaven. They, you know, it might not, when we immediately presume that they're stylizing everything on the Roman ideal, in many ways they're not, because we'll look at another example in a few moments. But again, when these coins are in, this is a silver example, when these coins are in circulation, they're not just in circulation in Britain, they're in circulation in France, right? So, and in Amsterdam, they may be going over to Germany, maybe getting to the heart of Rome itself. But when we look at this, you think that on the death of Conoblinus, the Cativalini landscapes becomes really unstabilized, but the name of Conoblinus lives on. It lives on as a symbol of the Britons. So you could be wandering around, say, Lyon in France, and you could be thinking, oh, you know, this is like really sort of Romanized now. You could be at Nîmes, for example, look at some of the beautiful temples there. You could go down to Marseille, you know, Roman centers. You could have some of these coins in your pocket, and these coins in your pocket aren't showing the emperor. They're actually showing a leader from another world. And that itself is Britain going out. It's sort of going out there. It's sort of saying, we are here, right? And in many ways, it's like an alien thing, isn't it? We sent out these probes out to space and saying that, you know, we're this planet, come to us, right? So you drag the aliens to Britain, right, by letting them know we're here. And in a way, you could think the same as coins. Or is that not the case at all? Leave that one there. So Karaticus and Togodumnus. When I did some research into Togodumnus, I didn't find that Togodumnus issued any coins, but we did find one. So Togodumnus did issue some coins, but Karaticus is issuing most of the coins. So 99% of all the coins that you find after AD 40 in the territory of the Cativalini, and they probably continued for not too long after, in production, not too long after the Romans managed to capture Verulamium and Colchester, because those were the main minting hubs for this coinage, for example. However, so Karaticus, what we're looking at is that they're producing a lot of coins, and they're seemingly developing a really tight-knit economy that is money based within the beating heart of Britain, and sort of probably most of East Anglia, sort of down sort of to Kent and sort of over towards Wiltshire and stuff. But the rest of Britain is not a money based economy. It's an economy based on everything that's being traded. And when we think about shifts in what money means and how this is projected in the mindsets of people, we start to think that these are a mixture of saying that we're here, we exist, we've got a monetary system, you know, we are all powerful, we don't care what symbolism we put on our coins, we want the world to know that we're here, and it's a bit like a milepost, I've mentioned this before, we've got mileposts on Marga Mountain. They may show Roman leaders' names or local leaders' names on Marga Mountain, but they don't actually say that it's 10 miles to Nedham, Neath. But it's a symbol of progression. It's a symbol of the times, and this is what these coins are. They're a symbol of the times. They're a symbol of the moving times. And interesting there, we'll read what that says. Caraticus may have been described from Cassivellaunus, commander of the British coalition against Caesar. So we're thinking, okay, this is way back in sort of AD 54. But when we start to think that this is sort of the one thing that we can see with coins is nothing's changed. So we got these coins in a period of Julius Caesar, we got these coins in the period of Caligula, and we got these coins in the period of Claudius, right? They're telling us something, right? It's almost as if the people within the territory of the Cativellauni are telling the world that they are the peoples of Britain. They are the up and coming tribal people. So in many ways, if the Romans hadn't conquered Britain, the Cativellauni people would have. They would have got bigger and bigger. They would have used coins. They would have used a monetary system. Let's look at it this way. This is a really interesting point, right? Now, this is a really interesting point. Now, I've never discussed this, and we're going to discuss it, right? So, say the Romans never ever invaded Britain, right? But the Cativellauni decided, right, we're going to conquer Britain. So the Cativellauni are already a tribal people in Britain, right? They're using a monetary system. They're starting to build towns and cities, right? They're starting to build an army, right? So if the Romans hadn't have conquered Britain, the Cativellauni would have, right? So going back to that thing that I've said, we would still be here having this discussion today, right? It would be slightly different. We wouldn't be talking about Roman era Britain. We'd be talking about the world we'd be talking about AD 40, where Caraticus became this great leader who conquered Britain, not the Romans. And in many ways, it would have been a more bloody way of doing it, right? The Romans had Pax Romana. We don't know what Caraticus had. We know he was a war leader. We know he was bloodthirsty. We know he was an annoying twonk, right? He seems to come up and get everywhere, and whether there were more than one Caraticus, we don't know. That's another thing that we've mentioned. But the point is that the history of Britain would have been a lot more bloody if the Cativellauni would have taken over Britain. And that's probably one of the things that we're talking about. The Adminius fled to Caligula, and he basically said, hi, things are really going to kick off. Come over to Britain, do something, because we don't want to be conquered by the Cativellauni, who are going to kill everybody. So we'll probably have a little bit of a break in a few moments. This is rather interesting. After AD 43, we don't know when Claudius come over. That's the problem. That's the problem in the history, right? So this is the issue, right? If we looked at the Roman invasion of Britain under Claudius, right? Who's going to be telling the story? Historians that wrote years later. That's going to be no good to us. So we may as well turn to the archaeology. Now, when we're looking at Julius Caesar is writing the story of the invasion, right? Claudius isn't. So we've got nothing to go by. So we may as well just go and look at the archaeology anyway. That's why we're doing Richborough next week in Kent. That's why we're going to look at that little bit of a story, the gateway to Britain, the gateway to the start of the Roman world in Britain, and the leaving, if you're leaving Roman Britain. So Claudius spent only 16 days in Britain. So we're told. But he was so proud of his conquest, he named his son Britannicus, seen here with Mars, from AD 51, right? this coin itself is sort of the embodiment of the whole Roman thing. Britannicus never ever become an emperor. The person who would become emperor would be Nero, and obviously Agrippina Junior and all the rest of it. But we're going into the historical side of things there. But look at that figure there. You know, the first time we actually see Britain on a coin, Britannicus, in AD 41. Britannicus, Britain. So if people go and say, oh, you know, there's no such thing as Britain. Yeah, well, there's been such thing as Britain since AD 51 at least, because there it is on a coin. Britain, Britannicus. And that's his son. And obviously, yeah, Claudius is from the same family of Caligula, so nephew and uncle. So when we think about this coin, you're thinking, well, Claudius is putting the figure of somebody else on his coins, not himself. And in a way, that's exactly what Caligula did. So, as good as each other. So, I think what we'll do, we'll take a little bit of a break now, and we're going, oh, yes. Yes. Can I just do something else? Right. Like, can I just do something else? The one material, the one metal that the Catavalana could have made coins out of was iron. And they didn't. And you're thinking, well, why not? Because iron was a very valuable material. Why didn't they make coins out of iron? And as you guys are thinking, well, nobody makes coins out of iron. We do. Our 1 and 2 pence pieces, up until very recently, are made of iron coated with copper, right? And the Chinese, for example, their whole economy was based on iron coins and bronze coins, but lots of iron coins. Why didn't we produce iron coins at this time? And don't say, oh, it's because it was too difficult. Well, that's a bit stupid, isn't it? Because the Chinese did it. So if the Chinese can do it, why didn't we? Right? And the Chinese coins had little squares in the middle of them, right? So they were far easier to carry than round coins that we've been using in the West ever since. Bill, you can answer this question. Do they still use coins in China with holes cut out of the middle? But you can answer that in a minute. Right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna have a break. And there we go. Right, Bill, over to you. You can answer. You can say whatever you like, Bill. But you've been to China, right? And you've there's this guy. He went to Moscow and he bought me this hat. Do you know, Bill? Right?
Well,
hang on, Bill. I haven't finished. Of all the gifts I've ever been given, right, by anyone, Bill, this is the one I use the most.
It's very practical too. It keeps your ears warm when you're farming.
Bill, and also one thing. You didn't tell me this. When you wear the ushanka down like this, it's what women do, right? Women wear the ushanka like this. It's men that wears it up. You didn't tell me that. I had somebody call me a pufter the other day.
There we are. It's very practical, Carl. No, in China, no. The only coins I've seen with holes in them came from India. I have seen on that part of the world, you know. The old annas and the pies.
Yes.
No, not the meat ones, you know, the coins called pies. Some of those had holes in them, I know that. And maybe Sri Lanka, around that area, around the Indian Ocean basins. In China, no. I can't recall coins like that anywhere else at all. Now one question. The last coin you showed us of Claudius and with Mars on the back, what does the SC stand for? Mars.
Senator Consulta, which is hang on a minute, let's get the right spelling. It's basically the SC means at the command of the Senate.
Oh, okay. Senator something then. Senator commander.
Hang on a minute. Let's just answer this properly. I've obviously answered it Roman meaning. So is basically at the command of the Senate, but that's why the SC is on there. Yeah, Senatus Consulto, which means by the decree or the command of the Senate. So yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay, Carl. Thank you.
Okay. What about you, Goff?
Oh, no questions. No, it's fascinating to think about those coins, isn't it? How many hands they've been through over 2,000 years.
Oh yeah, and I tell you what, I'll share a little bit of a story with you. When I was in the first year of the comprehensive school, they asked us to write a story that we really wanted to write. So I sat down, and it was like I wrote a story of a coin. So I said this guy had a coin in the Roman period, and it went through a few hands, and then it went down into the sewage system, and then it was picked up in the medieval period, and some children played with it, and then it ended up in the mud again, and years later it was found by an archaeologist. And then it's like, this is the thing. I when you look at coins like that, it's almost as if they've not traveled in time. I've mentioned this before. They're like time capsules. So there are lots of objects. You know, we say this about bodies, don't we? You know, we Otzi, you know, if he hadn't been hacked out the ice by two people wearing pink ski outfits, you know, his body would have been well preserved. And we think, oh, look how well preserved this person is after 5,500 years. But when we look at archaeological objects, we think, well, even that axe that we saw earlier on, there's not much difference in time between when that axe went in the ground and when the axe is in somebody's hand today. So you're thinking there's no decay, there's not much happened to it. And when you look at a gold coin, it's almost as if you're looking at this gold coin. You said how many hands it went through, but you're also talking about this gold coin, and you're thinking that it's still the same gold coin, it's still everything the same about it as it exactly was before it ended up in the ground nearly 2,000 years ago. And that's a very good point. The coins are like time capsules, they don't go anywhere.
Yep.
And talking about time capsules, Henry,
Just a quick on your coin one.
please.
Were the coins a standard weight?
Yes.
Or standard value?
Yes. Now, that's a really good point. So obviously, the mint pellets around the outside, that's what they're called, pellets. The pellets around the outside that we get on coins now, are basically to sort of act against cutting bits off the coins. So they knew about that back then, right? But then again, that was just taken from maybe a Roman idea, and they put those little lines to sort of as a little sort of to keep the portrait in. Maybe that's not the idea about that. But yes, when there was something called a moneyer's name was placed onto coins. So you had moneyers' names placed onto coins in the Anglo-Saxon period. So it would be like it would be on the front of the coin, Rex Ethelfrump, right? And on the back it would be Davy Jones made this coin, and the name on the back of the coin, the reverse coin, was more important than the name of the person whose coin it was for. So Rex whoever. And the reason why the moneyer's name was so prominent on the backs of coins in the Anglo-Saxon period and throughout the medieval period is because that moneyer, if there's not the right amount of silver in that coin, he could be put to death. So he had to make sure that his name was on there, and it's just saying, right, this coin has got X amount of silver in it, it's got X amount of gold in it, my name's on this coin, right? And woe be told anyone who says that it's not on this coin. So the moneyer's name would be more prominent on a coin than the king, right? So yes, this has always been the case. The weird thing is, well, you asked this, Henry, right? And I'm going to say something really silly, right? Who cares what weight's in this coin? You're just using it on market value, whatever. But they did care. They did care. When we've weighed coins, it's almost as if the accuracy of gold in these coins is between 0.001%. You know, they're so accurate, these coins, in weight. And we don't not only get this time, we get this from very early on. So what they would do, they would make coins into pellets. We've got these pellet molds, right? So you would drip gold into this pellet mold, right, and it would get to the top and it would settle, and that there's the right amount of gold in there, and then you'd hammer it, right? You'd hammer it soft. You would knock these out, and you'd have a money there, hammering them straight away, right? And it's what I'm trying to get at. It's not my mind is it's not that important, the weight in these coins, in real terms, if you're just using it to buy a chicken, right? But it is. It's massively important, and that the word, this is the wrong word, but the gold standard is set in coins for a very early, from the very early stage.
Right. Second question.
Yeah, go for it.
The map you put up earlier of the tribes of Britain, what date was that depicting?
Do you want a bog honest answer? Right? Do you know what? We're gonna explain something within something before we have the break now, and there's an important point to be made here. Now. And it's just in a statement, really. So if we go, these are the tribal people in Britain's according to the Romans.
Yeah,
right?
It was a black and white one I was looking at.
Oh, right, yeah, okay. That one.
Yep.
These are again, I'll make that statement. These are the tribal peoples in Britain according to the Romans, right? It's not necessarily the tribal peoples that actually existed, right? Because for example, when we look at the Iceni people, they were the Iceni people. It was with an E rather than a C, but the Romans, for pronunciation, called them the Iceni, right? So we know, we sort of know the names of the sort of Atrebates, the Cantiaci, the Trinovantes, the Catavallani, the Iceni people from coins. But when you start to go out that and you start to look at people like the Denomnoi, who didn't actually produce coins, right? So their name's not preserved on coins, but the name I think is actually preserved on some stone carvings. But whenever you look at stone carvings, these are stone carvings put up by the Romans to administer an area, right? So if we want to look at this logically, the way the Romans are doing it is the way we do it today. So, okay, this pointless, stupid assembly election nonsense, which is going on in May. More pigs in the trough. Sorry, I've just made a political statement there. That what they've done, they've basically said, right, what we'll do, we'll abandon all the old constituencies and we'll build new ones, right? Those. By using that example, it's not the people that are being recognised in those constituency boundaries by who they are. It's the administrators, right? So it's the Romans who are producing these an idea of these maps, right? Not as accurate as this, but and then later historians say, all right, the Siluris were there, and the Demete were there, and the Ordovicians were there, and the Boom were there, right? but there is nothing written. There is nothing written to say that the name Siluris was a name that the people ever called themselves in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing in it. There's no carvings. There's no nothing to say that we called ourselves the Siluris. And this is my big argument. Because it's not, in my book, for example, I basically this is a good point. I did actually here we go. I did go out of my way at the back of my book. It's page 122. It says, table of people who have lived in South Wales, bordering on Monmouthshire in the east and Carmarthenshire in the west since 300 years BC. And the table of people go from So I basically said that we've got valleys and upland area, tribal regions, Swansea, Ammon, Lougher, Towie, Dylais, Avon. And I basically say each of these would have been an individual tribe. But for the Romans to deal with this, they said, we'll just call them the Silures. That's what they did. Because when they're sort of going into, say, the Dylais Valley, or they're going into the Avon Valley or the Llinvi Valley, Bill, which has probably got a population back then of about 100 people, they're just going to think, oh, right, it's just not worth it. We'll just call them the Silures. And that's exactly what they did. Does that answer your question?
Yep, that's fine. That's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the total lecture there. You can pay me extra for that. Right, okay then. We're going to have a break now. It's 8:33, right? I want to get this done tonight, so we're going to have a break until like 8:43 and we'll be back. I'll speak to you in a minute.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, here we go. Yeah, here we go. What do you mean here we go? Ah, there we go. 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 Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. Oh, fuck off. So that's it. And mine is just about. I missed it anyway. Yeah. Is that 12 days? 11 days, huh? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah.
How you doing, Bill?
I'm here.
Are
Carry
you
on.
Are you winning the war?
Which one? My eye?
You got a problem with your eye?
Well, I've just had a cataract operation.
Have you?
Yeah, a week ago. Yeah, yeah. So I got a new lens now. All to
And
see you better with.
And you're still wearing glasses?
Yes, I am. I got a problem actually. I got to wear glasses because I've only had one eye done. So the bad eye, the right one, I still got to use that lens. So that's why I'm seeing normal out of that one and not so normal out of my left one because I don't need the lens. So the lens now on the old prescription is interfering with my new eye. So I'm in that halfway house situation until I get the second one done now. Like most people.
But when you having the second one done?
I don't know yet. I'm on the waiting list. A few months, probably.
doesn't this affect your driving if you don't get a new prescription?
I hope not, because I have driven.
No, technically, you're legally obliged. You have to get a new prescription.
Yeah. I'm in the process of doing that now. In the meantime, I'm driving. Anyway, thank you for your concern, Carl.
The irony is you'd have to drive to the opticians to get it done.
Yeah. That's true. That's life. I'm not the only one.
I think Goth have had his eyes done, haven't you, Goth?
Yeah, I've said them both done. Yeah.
Yeah.
You had them done privately, done the same day, didn't you?
No, I had them both done different days, but privately, yeah. Because there was about a 3-year waiting list when I was needed them, so I bugger it. I had them done privately.
So did you have them done at the one at the Vale Hospital? Did you by Lancaster?
The Bridgend Clinic.
Oh yeah.
Oh right.
Western Wales. Yeah.
Well, the cost now, Goff, is about $2.5 grand.
It was 1,200 quid each eye when I did it. That was about 5 years ago, I suppose.
Yeah, so it's double the price now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the waiting list has come down tremendously.
Well, for the first one, I waited about 4 months, which is very good.
Yeah, you can get it done quickly now. But you may have to travel somewhere not locally, but you still.
Well, for this one, I had to travel down to St. Joseph's in Malpass.
Well, I know, I just go to Bristol for hers.
Yeah, they do a lot down there. Yeah, they do.
It's well worth having done, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but I'll say until I get the second one done now, the balance isn't right.
I'm thinking of getting a third eye put somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Good for you.
On the end of my,
what's that?
on the end of my finger.
Well, yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
Hey, yeah, I've got something for you, right? I've got something for you. So, I was having a conversation with Michelle the other day, right? And we were talking about place names, right? And she said, well, what does the word Wick mean? And I said, well, Wick means a place where they produce things. It's like an Anglo-Saxon name. So she said, well, what does Wick produce? And I said, well, it's never produced anything. And she said, well, why is it called Wick? And I said, oh, well, the Barry people must have nicked what Wick produced, because the word Greenwich, as in Greenwich, means the place that produces green or grass and stuff and hay. Berwick upon Tweed basically it was a place that produced barley, for example. But the point is that Barry people nicked whatever Wick used to produce, and therefore.
Oh yes, that's perfectly understandable. I understand that. Yeah, I thought
Wick used to have a brewery and an oat house.
Well, it would have been Oakitch.
The oat house still exists. It's a flats.
Yeah, but the Barry people nicked the contents.
Yeah, that figures.
Oh, the latest figure, Bill. 356 cars have been stolen in Barry this year.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
yeah. Not surprised.
On that note,
how many young girls have been molested?
You had to bring it down. You had to bring it down, didn't you? And that's in Wick. Right, let's crack on.
Good old Barry. Good old Barry.
Goff had to move out of Wick because they used to molest him.
You got to laugh, haven't you?
Well, the only reason Henry's moved there because he likes people molesting him. Right?
Henry doesn't exist. He's just a voice.
Oh, it's Henri, isn't it? He's French. Right. Anyway, we'll crack on. So we were talking about this wonderful.
AI is wonderful, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
What is?
I'm talking to Robert. I'm talking to Henry.
What Henry? What? It's wonderful being molested.
Henry's not a person. It's a robot.
Can we just have look, Bill? Bill, shut up. Can we just have one conversation? There's only 4 of us on.
Come on.
Right. Okay. When we're talking about elite Roman material in Britain, so we're talking about what happened after Conobolinus. We're looking at Verulamium was basically the place of Togodumnus, and Caliva Atrebatum as the territory of the Catavalani people was expanding into the territory of the Atrebati people, who also produced coins. The Caliva Atrebatum, we think, was the base of Craticus, because what they've done, working in the archaeology in and around the likes of Caliva Atrebatum, they found a very, very long hall with all the post holes and everything, and all the archaeology, a sort of rectangular hall with another hall coming off it, and we thought that must have been sort of a stately hall that Craticus had built. Now, the one thing about the likes of Caliva Atrebatum is we know that the area of Caliva Atrebatum, the circumference, was a whopping 1.5 miles long. Now, the circumference of the likes of Maiden Castle is 1 kilometre, and that's massive. Me and Bill have walked it. It's massive. It'll take you a good 10 minutes to walk around the top, but the circumference of Caliva Atrebatum is 1.5 miles long. So this is a huge area, and these are not hill forts. These are not bank and ditched enclosures. These are actually towns being developed in the Iron Age, oppidums, as we would call them. Talking about this and talking about things developing, and when you get onto sort of more finer things and stuff that Rome's bringing over to us. If we gently look at coins, for example, we're talking about a comparison of a silver coin of Craticus and a silver coin of Claudius. These two coins meet, and we're talking about the one on the left of Craticus is really well worn, and if that's being issued about AD 40, it must have been in well worn circulation for a very, very long time. And the example on the right isn't worn at all. Now, if you look at the Craticus coin, that sort of reminds me of those sort of old coins that you used to have in your pocket, those old pennies from all those years ago. And the one thing I would say before we move off this image is that when you're finding coins of any of these people in the past, they're only a small representation of the coins that survive. So say we talk about, thousands and thousands of coins of Craticus have survived, and you're thinking, well, what does that represent in terms of how many coins were actually made? And so if you're coming across a few thousand coins of Craticus, that would probably represent maybe 1% of the total coins that Craticus ever made in his lifetime. So that must mean there were hundreds of thousands of these things in circulation. Moving on to thinking of, I didn't mention this last night. Again, back in Caliva Atrebatum, you could think this is a .7 head from a ditch at Caliva Atrebatum. Now, was Caliva Atrebatum actually attacked by the Roman forces in AD 43 or AD 44? By looking at the evidence of one skull, we do not know, because there's very little evidence of any conflict between the Romans and native Britons that we can actually find in the archaeology. But if Caliva Atrebatum was under some kind of attack by Roman forces, it would have quickly and swiftly been captured, like all other places around Britain. Again, remember that fact. All those bank and ditched enclosures, all those in brackets hill forts in Britain, all 5,000 of them, there's only about 1% that show any signs that they've ever been under any attack of any form at any stage in history. And that's not a lot. but this is an open. Khalifa Atabatum, as I said, is like an open site. It's like a big sort of massive sprawling town set, oppidum. Now, whenever I look at something like this, and this is, we just have a brief look at this because I've got a few notes, and I'm very wary of time. When you're looking at something like this, you're thinking, right, okay, what is exactly going on? So we're sort of going there, we're sort of extend to the conquest by AD 47. And so if we go to this, we're thinking, right, okay, what is wrong about this? Well, there's just a few things wrong, right? Yeah, the Roman forces, we do believe, got to Canterbury, Cantai, crossed the River Medway, but there was no London there to capture, right? There wasn't a Londinium or London to capture. Obviously, Verulamium, that existed. They would have gone to Verulamium and Camel and Junum. Bill's mumbling. So one of the things about Camel and Junum is that it's very likely that Camel and Junum was actually captured. What the hell? Camel and Junum was probably actually captured by naval forces, by Roman Marines, rather than Roman forces marching from crossing the River Medway and crossing over the River Thames and then crossing a load more rivers to get to Colchester. It doesn't make sense. So whenever you see plans like this, it tries to simplify history, which is probably not the case. And we've got to think about what was really going on in Roman era Britain. What was it? Was it a military battled conquest? Was it sort of, because what the one thing that's missing in history is this, is quite clear, right? Again, this is why we don't want to do the history bit, right? The historians always say, oh, the Roman legions, right? They went boom, 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 all the way across Britain, capturing everything, right? You forget one thing, that there was also a big British army that actually supported Rome, and you're thinking, well, where are they in the calculations? So this is why we go back to the archaeology. This is why we start to think, right, was there are there signs of any military conquest of Novimagus, Chichester? Was there any kind of military conquest of De Novaria, which is Dorchester, which is actually a stone throw 2 miles away from Maiden Castle? It's something like that. So we're not seeing sort of military destructive evidence when we're looking at these localities. So let's just move away from that. Now back to this. Now this is rather interesting, and when as an archaeologist, right, I've got this habit, and Bill knows this. I can wander across a field and I can see a piece of Roman pottery 3 or 4 meters away, and nobody else has seen it, and I'm thinking, right, that Roman piece of pottery in the field, it indicates what? And I would usually say that piece of Roman pottery indicates Roman occupation, but that's not exactly true. That's not exactly true at all. I would say that, but it's not exactly true, because if we look at this, so when we're looking at sort of just before that night of AD 43, so archaeology shows increasing Roman contacts. So this is known, this is an amphora known as a Dressel 1. This was for importing Italian wine, but there is a point with this. Wine was being produced in Britain categorically before AD 43. In the archaeology, we see grape seeds in the Iron Age. We know that wine is being grown here. So when people turn around and say the British people like wine because they already grew it. But what we see in the archaeology is this is known as a Dressel 1 form amphora. This is sort of Italian Gaulish type. They're importing this stuff in, right? But folks, who's to say that we weren't exporting our wine? Has anyone ever done any survey on British amphoras? And they're going to say, no, there aren't any, because we kept our bloody wine in barrels. That's why. So when we look at this in the context of the Roman world, let's just chuck the baby out with the bathwater, folks. Let's just do this quickly, right? So let's think about This is going to sound so weird. Let's look at the British the conquest of Europe, right? You find the right evidence. You see British coins on the North France coast in Brittany. You see evidence of barrels from Britain that actually stored wine, right? That's not a conquest, but it is actually trade. And this is before the proper conquest of Roman Britain in AD 43. Can you see my point? What's happening is there's an inferred trade of ideas and movement of products over Britain and northern France, right, which indicate the same thing. Exactly the same thing is going on in Britain as exactly the same thing is going on in France, right? We're exporting stuff and they are importing stuff over here, right? It's the same thing. So vis-a-vis, we are telling the world about Britain. We are doing the Coca-Cola trick with we're chucking our stuff over there so you get a bit of Britain into you, you know? So let's not be totally obsessed with this one-way idea. Unfortunately, historians tell us that it's a one-way idea, that we're getting all this stuff over from Rome, but it's not true. We're moving stuff over to Europe as well. Very important. And how do we know that? There's another fact there. We're exporting our tin for, what's the date? We're exporting our tin to Europe for about 1,300 years. Do you know what I mean? So that's my point. So we're seeing this and we're making such a fuss about burials in Britain, which have Roman goods in them. But what about burials in Europe that have British goods in them? Think about it, and that's a fact. Nobody is really doing that research properly. Looking at this, so we've got fine table was Terra Sigillata increasing. This is coming from the Gaulish factories of central France, and it sort of moves over into the sort of modern German sort of border. I'm not sure as far as Stuttgart, but it's sort of sprawling over into places like Alsace. So we've got this sort of massive production of Samianware. Now, it would be very interesting to see if we are exporting pottery as well, you know, more less rudimentary sort of types of pottery over to Europe. That would be an interesting survey, and I'm not sure it's really been done. So because when people are studying archaeology, they like to do it macho. Let's find a bit of amphora, let's find a bit of Samianware, let's find this, let's find all the butch stuff of the Roman world. We're not trading stuff. Do you know what we're trading? We're trading bear skins with Europe. We're trading trousers. You know, we've actually got a market in trousers. You know, we are the inventors of trousers. When you think about it, no, we're not. But when you think about it, all that stuff which doesn't actually show in the archaeology, and Bill remembers the story of Terra Sigillata at that field in Colchester, that legendary field where Michelle found a Roman coin and we found a Roman clay hairpin, and Bill found a bit of Samianware that day, and I found a piece which I thought was Colchester Samianware, right? We eventually started making Samianware in Britain roughly about AD 300, but up until that point, we're importing this stuff. There is one thing that we can't say we never did in Britain. That's glass, right? Okay, let's not up the British one thing there. Yes, what did the Romans ever do for us? They did glass, right? So and let's go back to the other thing. What did the Romans ever do for us? They actually did peace. You know, they actually did peace, because obviously they stopped the Cativalani and they did peace. And so when we think about glass, for example, these types of objects, there's no record in the Roman world of us producing glass or exporting it. That's basically a fact. There's no evidence on the ground of us making glass. Sorry, but this glass isn't actually coming from Rome. It's not coming from northern France. It's actually not coming from the Roman world really at all. It's coming from Egypt. A new part of the Roman world is coming from Lebanon. It's coming from the Nabateans. It's coming from the east, right? So glass isn't really a Roman product. So this type of material, you can't give the credit to the Romans for this. This is being brought into Britain for quite some time. We're seeing more and more of this glass coming over to Britain between AD 40 and AD 43. Oh, and there's one thing, I don't know if I told you this story. We used to have a chap that used to come along to our class in Cumbria years ago called Gilbert. Right, and Gilbert was the only member of Archaeology Cymru that actually had free classes, because I promised everybody when they get to 90 they get free classes, right? So we used to have free classes. Anyway, Gilbert used to still fly a plane. He was still flying a plane when he was 92. Anyway, one day he came into one of the classes in Cumbria when I was teaching there. He brought in one of these bottles, and he'd actually found them in his wall all the way up in Cumbria. And the point is these are little sort of teardrop glass bottles. They're called teardrops. You're not going to get much in them, but they were for scents and perfumes. And we start to see more of these in a British context, roughly into that sort of AD 40 period. And also one thing that we're not really doing much of in Britain, bronzes. We're actually starting to see evidence of bronzes in Britain. We're seeing these little high status imported bronzes. Instead of sort of carving sort of godlike figures into stones in the Iron Age, they think, oh, well, we'll just go for the bronzes. That's something else. That's something different. But obviously what we're exporting to Europe is probably something different. You know, we might be exporting marble and various other things that are equally important in the world of trade. So thinking again that if we go back to that chart, when we're nearly at the end, I thought we were going to be ending a little bit earlier, but we haven't. So again, when you think about this again, if we remind us where we are, Caliva Atrebatum, Verulamium, and Camundunum. These are the places that the Romans wanted to go to, because these are the places that were part of this new world of the Catavolani state that we're building. And there's a lot going on, and there's a much bigger story. So, and again, back talking about the mint as well, with Colchester, thinking about Verulamium, St. Albans. So the one thing that we haven't mentioned is this. If we want to talk about the archaeology again, compare it with Caligula. So Caligula, we've got harbours, we've got ports, we've got the build-up, we've got a Roman legion associated with Caligula in AD 39. So if we look at Claudius similarly, what we do find is that there's a build-up of fortifications along the French coastline. Right? Why? There's more harbours being built, particularly the one at Boulogne is being expanded. There's supply depots in northern France for some kind of build-up, doing something. So from AD 43 to AD 40 to AD 43, they're working to the build-up invasion of Britain. And if you want to think about it, that's very similar to the other way around. So from sort of when we think about it, we're thinking about from late 1942, we're all 1943, we're talking about the 6th of June 1944, we're talking about a build-up to invade France, right? So all the things that is being done in between sort of AD 40 and AD 43 is being done in Britain, sort of 1942, 43, 44. So it's sort of a similar thing as well. And obviously they're reoccupying the fort at Velsen, which was obviously Amsterdam, constructed by the likes of Caligula. So one sort of little bit of the story, if we can go back to this, I want an excuse to go here. So what we're talking about is rather interesting, right? Is that across the British context, places like Caliva Atrebatum, we don't see any periods of massive instability. There is instability, Columbanus is dead, but we don't see any destruction of settlements. We don't see any pre-AD 43 invasion, certainly not in AD 41, 42, right? We don't see any evidence of that, but obviously more and more coins. So the planning to come over to Britain is actually being built up in the context of France. It's been built up in the context of Amsterdam. Very similar to what was going on with the likes of Caligula. So when sort of as we get to AD 43, the Cativalani are expanding. They're really getting into Caliver Atrabatum. There's things changing, and obviously causing alarm for people to flee, to ask for the Romans to help. So the night before AD 43, the archaeological reality: from archaeology alone, Britain shows no Roman garrison presence before AD 43. No confirmed Roman military structures. No material culture horizon indicating advanced occupation by the Romans. The archaeological records suggest the invasion of AD 43 appears suddenly from the British side, but not from the staging of the invasion from France. What we do see immediately after AD 43, when we're going to start off with this next week, this beautiful site. We're just doing this next week. We're just slaughtering this one next week. What we do see immediately after AD 43, the sudden appearance of legionary fortress at Richborough, which is that one that's got a cross on it. X marks the spot. Richborough and Colchester become immediately militarized sites. So obviously the Marines are going to Colchester. It's a military site. It's taken over from the local civilians in Colchester that are all Romanized anyway. So we're starting to see after AD 43 lots of military gear about, particularly in Kent and Colchester. Lots of Claudian coinage to pay the troops. There is, in the way of when you talk about pilgrims progress all the way from sort of Richborough all the way through to London, we've got a roadway which is probably built above another roadway, but those types of things are being improved. Supply dumps. That sharp horizon is archaeologically very clear, which makes the absence before AD 43 more striking. So suddenly Rome is here. That's it. And in conclusion today, it's 9:13. In conclusion today, between AD 41 and AD 43, there's an increase in the idea of British people building their own way, right? They're building that sense, and back to the point I've made numerous times, that if Rome had never invaded, the people would have been dealing with the Cativalani conquest. The Brigantes would have been fighting them in the north. They would have captured the territory of the Dumnoni. The people of Cymru Wales would have been a walkover because there's not many of them. So political instability after the death of Conobelinus in AD 40, but Caraticus is sort of making coins and in Caliver Atrabatum. From archaeology alone, Britain is politically not seeming that it's getting ready for invasion, but things have changed. And by the invasion day, AD 43, Britain is very different from what it had been in AD 40. A world that was waiting for change, whether it was going to be under the jackboot of the Romans or the jackboot of the Cativalani. And again, that last thing I'll say today, that we would still be having this conversation today, but it would be the Cativalani Empire in Britain, which would have become a place conquered by the Anglo-Saxons. Because, and I say that quite easily, and laissez-faire, because this is a very strikingly difficult thing for me to say, but when we get to about AD 450, AD 70, just moments before the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in AD 476 in name, right? Britain was collapsing, and the reason why we've got groups of people being able to take over towns and villages and places, because there was a terrible plague across Britain that made people, and lots, towns and cities in Britain were completely abandoned. Carinian was completely abandoned, Caliver Atrabatum was completely abandoned, St. Albans completely abandoned. All these places were completely abandoned. So when you get people moving in, even Britain's going back into areas, it's a deserted, rambless, endless, empty landscape, except for the north, because it seems that the Roman world still continues in the north for quite some time. Even that is snuffed out. So the light would have been still shining today on a different world. But the world that would have been developed into us talking today, not about the Romans, but the Catavalani. Let's just mention this. This is Richborough. Richborough is a fascinating site. It's an amazing site. Richborough has, I know me and Bill are going to have swords over this next week, but that cross on the ground, right, is apparently the same as this, which is a monumental arch that was erected in Richborough, right, which I think is absolute tosh, right, but it probably, there was a monumental arch which was some slightly different, right, but that there, the outline is not going to support the foundations of that marble there. It's not going to do it. But anyway, you've got this monumental arch, and the point, I mentioned this as a reconstruction, right? So you've got the original legionary fortress there, and then it expands and expands and expands. And the point to be made is that you enter at the port of Richborough, and you see the monumental arch. There is a monumental arch wherever it looked like. We'll try and sort of do this next week. And when you're leaving Britain to go to Richborough, you're going underneath the monumental arch, and that was a monumental arch associated with Claudius. So there's 2 points with this. When we do get to the Temple of Claudius in Colchester, that's a massive monument to a single Roman emperor, right? And then when you look at the monumental arch in Richborough, that's a single monument to a single Roman emperor, also for Claudius. There's very little evidence of anything that's associated with any other Roman emperor in Britain. Don't mention Hadrian's Wall, because most of Hadrian's Wall was probably either built before Hadrian or built after Hadrian, but certainly it was never called Hadrian's Wall. On that note, we'll be back here next week. So beautiful site. We'll just do this archaeology. Looking forward to it. Something good. Right. Okay, Bill. We'll start off with you. Anything you want to say, babe?
Yes, I'll take you back to your claim that there was archaeological evidence for iron coins. Is that correct?
No. I said no. I said, why is there no archaeological evidence for iron coins in Britain when there are archaeological evidence for iron?
So you're frozen.
You've upset him.
I have. He's gone. He has gone.
I don't know what's happened.
You haven't paid your electricity bill.
Right. Okay then. Right. Okay, carry on, Bill. So what?
Well, I can't believe it. I mean, why would people attempt to hammer out iron coins, known as the hardest material of all to cut and metal work? It'll rust anyway in times, and that's not good for a rusty coin in your hand. So I just don't understand why there are iron coins, full stop. But you say there are, but not in Britain.
The Chinese, yes, but obviously we're going to have them in India as well. But the point is, with all right, you're missing my point, right? You're missing my point on lots of levels, right? Bronze coins eventually corrode as well, and so do silver in a certain way, and so do protein coins. All these things sort of degrade, right? It's just that iron coins degrade a lot quicker, right? But these people did have the technology to smelt iron, right? They had the technology to do lots of things in iron. Iron swords, iron nails, all these things existed before the Romans, right? So, the Catavalani were in areas, for example, the Weald, which goes into Kent, right, and Sussex, which was eventually part of Catavalani territory. Why didn't they use the materials that were available to make their coins? Why are they not? If they're making bronze coins, the point I'm trying to make, if you use your resources, and it's just and iron itself is such a valuable thing in the Iron Age, right? Surely it's going to be one of the most valuable things to make into a coin. That's my point. You can agree or disagree, but that's my point. Anything else, Bill?
Okay, no, thank you, Carl.
Right, Henry.
I'm good.
And
That's it. Look forward to the rugby at the weekend.
oh yeah, I know somebody. Michelle's got a friend who's going. It's in Ireland, isn't it? Apparently they're going to start drinking before they get on the ferry at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they're gonna get over to Ireland, right? And it's like, well, why are you going? You're not even going to see the match. And he said, oh, I'm not even going to go into the stadium. I'm actually going to sit in the pub.
Hang on, Guinness is £11 a pint, I've been told, in Dublin for the weekend.
Yeah, it's cheaper to go to Cork. It's only €6.
Oh dear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Guinness 0.
Yeah, nice drink. Nice drink.
Actually, my dad drinks it, but we keep him off the wagon. Right, okay, Henry, anything else, love?
No, that's it. Great.
I'm just really upset that it's just that you kind of like this tonight because you're a gob-ass person at the end of every lecture. You really let me down.
Don't worry, I'll come back with something later.
Yeah, I know you will. You send me loads of bloody emails, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
there'll be that tax demand.
The tax demand, exactly. Right, okay. Goff, my darling, the love of my life.
Oh dear. No questions. Really good. Thank you very much.
Well, it could be worse. I could be Liz saying, Goff, I'm going to come over to your place.
No, she wanted to know what you were doing.
All right, then, give her my number and we'll meet up in Wick.
She said, have you seen the professor lately?
You should say yes. You see him every week, and she's going to be really jealous.
Did I say I see him in Technicolor every Wednesday night?
Exactly. Can I just ask you a simple question? Oh no, I shouldn't be asking it. But when Alan decided to sell the business, does he really care what was going to happen to Liz?
No. No.
I'll give the thing is, Alan, it was time for him to retire, wasn't it? So that's it.
Time to go.
Time to go. On that note, time to go. If nobody else has got anything else to say, thank you very much, boys and girls. And Goff, Mr. Bill Wankin.
Thank you. Night, everyone.
Thanks for the checks and the money, guys. Okay, night. Good night, Goff.
Bye.
Night, Bill.
Good night.
Night,
Enjoy
Henry
yourselves.
Fonda. Night, babes.
I don't think Bill spotted that.
He doesn't spot it. Did you hear the language that he used in the break?
No, I tripped out.
He was going effing this, effing that. I thought, oh my God. I thought I was bad, but it was just like, did I just hear that? He said...
Don't you have a censorship button?
Well, it's too late when he says that.
You're as bad as the BBC.
Oh, well, no, hang on a minute. I got to be fair. They did spot the one piece of abuse and do it out, but not the other bit. Get it very, very straight.
Right, go and look after your sheep.
One of my films has been entered into the Nepalese Film Festival.
Are you going there?
Oh, fucking hell. Brazil. We got Brazil. We got the Berlin Film Festival, and
it's all tax deductible.
Yeah, right. And also we got one in Ireland as well, and West Wales. So there you go. Oh, not Ireland. No, we were going to do the oh, I can't remember where it was. No, I'm not doing that one. But anyway,
there's the Galway Film Festival and there's the Cork Film Festival.
The Galway Film Festival. They'd love me over there.
You can go to the 1586 bar in Galway.
Yes, sir. Do they do zero Guinness?
Doubt it, but it's actually interesting because you go into the pub. They built it, and there's actually the original street is actually still kept inside the pub.
But hang on, man. Let me work this out. So what they've done, they've extended over to the old street.
they've kept the buildings, the old historic buildings from the street, the fascia of them, they've and basically built into the pub. So you've actually got this historic, goes back to the 16th century buildings,
Nice.
and you've got Guinness.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good.
Right.
Hey, on a personal level, right? Just on a like really sensible level now. Um, uh, uh, um, my parents were planning to fly to Cyprus, right? And we're telling them it's a really dumbass idea at this stage.
Yeah, I would probably stall on that one.
Yeah. Oh, okay. If you and your missus had a holiday book for Cyprus next week, would you go?
I would be looking at the Foreign Office advice very seriously. I know I looked at it today and they did say you can still travel. The problem with that is if they say you can, you won't be covered for travel insurance to claim the holiday if you don't go.
Right. Okay.
You might be able to rearrange your flight though. You might be able to talk to the flight company and say, look, in light of the current situation, can I reschedule my flight booking if that's all you've booked?
Yeah. And now Turkey's involved. Oh my bloody god! What a mess.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you
The,
know, I cannot. It's just like I cannot understand for the life of me, right, how this has happened, right? And it's like it's absolute madness, right? Look, as much as you don't like Donald Trump, right, and whatever, and you've got every right to think that,
or
it's
your other
just
dad.
yeah, shut up. This guy was saying there's end to all wars, right? You know, I'm gonna and now he starts one that's on so many levels.
It's not thought through at all, so it's quite catastrophic. But unfortunately, I think the UK government have been left on the back foot.
Oh, but particularly with the Chagos Islands as well. What a mess.
Yeah, so they couldn't organise the proverbial. But anyway, let's not go down the politics route.
Hey, Falklands is next.
Yeah, my son's out there.
What?
Yeah,
What is that? What is he part way through a tour? Or is it
yeah.
sort of at? Right. Okay.
He's counting penguins.
He probably bloody is. There's nothing. What else is he going to do there?
Yeah, we've had lots of pictures of them.
He can't clear bloody mines, can he? Oh, there's no minefield still there, is there?
Not sure. He did do the battlefield site.
Oh, right.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
so you can pick up some live archaeology.
Yeah, we'll leave that there, love. And the problem is because it's because nothing really grows there. It's just not gonna. It's gonna be still there, isn't it?
It is.
Oh, God.
It's all on the surface. Anyway,
Anyway, let's crack on. Anyway, I will see you next week.
adios.
And if you're not with us, you're isolated in somewhere. Right. Okay.
But that's the week after. Right.
All right. We'll leave that one there. We'll leave that one
Okay.
there. Okay. Don't go to the Donets because nobody seems to care about that anymore.
No, I'm going. I'll tell you offline later where I'm going.
Yeah, love it.
But,
All right then.
but it's Western North.
Hang on. How can you have west and north? So it's northwest.
Yep.
I just leave it. Iceland, we love it. Right. Anyway, I'll speak to you soon.
Okay. Bye for now.
Thanks for that. Night, Henry. Night. Happy days. Right. Okay. So. Oh, I don't know what's happening with this. There's no one talking online. It's Marilyn said hi. It's weird. So anyway, chat. I might have a little lie down a minute. So before I travel back to South Wales, so it's right. Chat box, nothing in the chat box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nothing in the chat box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.